Spooky, spooky, very spooky. Oh no, it's a monster. Spooky, spooky.
Welcome to the scariest time of year, January.
February's coming up. Oh no.
Or what if you don't know what your New Year's resolutions are going to be? That's pretty scary.
Yeah.
You don't know how to get better. You don't have any
What's more
ideas.
frightening than a blank slate future with no ink to fill it? I'm Brian Vaughn of BoobTube Boys, which is this podcast. It's normally about TV. It's not today.
Not at all.
Whoa, Jinx, you owe me a Coke. That was Van Lee. Spencer Hendricks is here too.
I'm the one who was afraid of my New Year's resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
Underrated joke in the office one time is somebody says something at the same time as Creed, and Creed goes, "Jinx, buy me some Coke."
That's amazing.
Yep.
I haven't noticed that somehow. We're not here to talk about television today. We're here to do something we do only once per annum.
I actually read a word in my story that you gave me.
And that is read creepypasta stories written by one another. How this works, if you're not familiar with what a creepypasta is, it's a little, just fan-written horror story online. And we used to read actual creepypastas written by people on the internet. That was sort of fun to read aloud and analyze. But, ultimately, we don't really want to poke fun at others, and we really want to write short stories of our own.
We're all three writers in one way or another in some aspect, and I would say solidly good at it. So the trick to a creepypasta is writing a bad thing, which is kind of tough.
Yeah.
And that's the gimmick of it.
And
it's
I
fun.
think it's morphed over the years. Like, I find myself now trying to write a solid enough little story while making it funny in the process. Like, obviously it's exaggerated and it's meant to be comedic, but
I think what I'm most impressed by is just the fact that we've actually turned this into an authentic tradition. It's
Sure.
what is this, our third or fourth
this is
time?
our fourth.
My God, it's pretty cool. We've actually made it a real thing. We do creepypastas, and we have a lot of them in the archive, so you should check that out.
We've gotten good feedback on these from regular listeners especially, and that really has fueled us to keep doing these. Also, we like doing it, so thanks to those who have fed us back in that way. The way we've done it the past couple of years is one of our stories requires a writing prompt that one of us comes up with, and the other is just a free-for-all. This year, our writing prompt was issued by me due to a thought I had in the shower that will be, we'll see what that thought was later in this episode. And that prompt is doppelganger. So your story just has to include something about a doppelganger. And other than that, it's yours to do with what you wish.
I personally really enjoy these prompts. We started last year, Spencer. You gave us a prompt of a hunting trip.
Yes.
My inspiration came as I was mowing the lawn. So we all think of these prompts and weird things, weird places.
Your prompt, Spencer, also forced me to start a real, earnest short story about a father-son hunting trip that upsets me, and I have not finished it.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the one you actually did, because I was going to say I really, really enjoyed both of you guys, what you did with that father-son thing.
And that's what I love
really good
about the prompts is seeing what you guys do with them.
And I guess next year I'll be creating the prompt.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
It's
I have
on
a full year to come up, or 9
Yeah,
months
you
of
have
the year to
something
come
like
up with
that.
something.
Well, some people only have 9 months to come up with a baby. Shout out to AKJ 519 having another baby.
When's that due?
April.
Oh, so coming up.
Marcus, that's his name.
We already come up with a name.
Yeah.
So we named one
He's
after
gonna be
Elias,
pretty
the
cool, I
wrestler,
think.
and one after Buff Bagwell.
Yeah.
Buff Marcus
That's gotta
Bagwell.
be it. That's gotta be it. Subconsciously, if nothing else.
Can we trust anything that happens in April? I know the holiday of April that we celebrate worldwide is April Fool's Day. It could be just a big gag.
That's a
Might
good
not be
point.
real.
April showers.
I don't know, though. April's very
They bring
reliable
May flowers.
Mm-hmm.
in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe.
True. Yep. Sexy April. Yep.
So to start off, this week we're going to be reading our doppelganger stories. Next week, we will be reading our freeform stories. This is a two-parter because we realized we're very long-winded people.
We tried to do these in one in the past, and it does not
A
work.
couple years ago, I think, or maybe 3 even, where we thought we could just cram this in one episode, and we realized 4 hours later that we made a mistake.
Maybe we split this up. So for this first round, here's how it'll go. Van is going to be reading my doppelganger story. Spencer will be reading Van's doppelganger story, and I will be reading Spencer's.
That's right.
Who wants to lead it off?
I will be leading off this year.
All right.
And Brian, once again, this is from you.
Yes.
I believe this is titled A Familiar Face.
It is.
There wasn't enough evidence he could hit, but we knew he'd hit, Brian said, taking a sip from his 11th energy drink of the day. We could tell just by looking at him. He would have been fine anyway because of his defense, but it really seemed like he knew what he was up there to do, Spencer added, taking a sip from his 11th coffee of the day. Brian and Spencer were getting seated in their friend Van's garage studio, ready to record the trio's weekly television podcast, The BoobTube Boys, found wherever you get your audio.
Nice plug.
Left to their own devices, the two of them had drifted back to a familiar topic. How in 2004, they'd both predicted that St. Louis Cardinals catcher Yadier Molina would develop into a complete player rather than merely a standout defender, and that's very accurate. What a career that guy had, guys.
Yeah, amazing
Wow.
player.
He's done, right? Like, we're done with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. At least in America.
What's he doing in there anyway? Brian asked, trying not to let his eyes drift to the mortifying witch painting Spencer kept on his side of the recording partition as he inquired about Van. I think he's feeding the cats. He went inside like, aw, sad.
I had
You
originally
really did that to me.
I had
didn't you?
originally
so
written
sad.
this.
No, I'm kidding. It's fine.
Yeah.
Just throw it down and leave.
Yeah. We're done with this.
Yeah, I had started this one before the passing of Van's beloved cat, Vladimir, who,
Yeah,
by the
Vladimir.
way, one of the great cats to have ever lived.
Absolutely.
sure.
Kept me alive for 20
Yeah.
plus years. Well, that's not that many. Almost 20. 18 years
Yeah,
old.
amazing.
That cat lived. Great life for her.
Old enough to fucking smoke cigarettes and shoot a gun or something.
That's right. Buy some porn.
Yeah.
Except not in Texas now. Oh, thanks, Supreme Court. Anyway, I think he's feeding the cats. He went inside like 20 minutes ago, though. Something must be up. Maybe he and Katie accidentally started watching Bones, Spencer answered as Brian tried to think of Steven Tyler puns.
I'm sorry, but did this really happen? I feel like we really had this moment. Did you take a transcript and just actually
I
put
had
it down?
a secret recording in the room.
Is
I
this Johnny
feel like-
Radical's story?
I feel like we're actually reliving history right now.
Anyway, as Brian tried to think of Steven Tyler puns to awkwardly interject into the podcast's next episode, something feels off. He didn't even come out of the bedroom or anything when Katie answered the door, Brian said, testing the waters to see if Spencer felt the same sense of unease. And Katie seemed off too, tense even. Spencer nodded. I didn't want to say anything, but I thought so too. The studio even seems weird. He usually keeps everything so organized in here, and it's a mess today. The dry erase board just has a crude drawing of Stewie from Family Guy on it. It is something I would do, right? Draw Family Guy drawings.
Oh yeah, you fucking love Family Guy.
You know me. Brian scanned the room for additional signs that something was wrong and stopped cold upon noticing a new poster. Beast Games, the new game show experience from the mind of Mr. Beast. Okay, this has to be a joke or something. Then again, that thing is framed. He is a framed Mr. Beast poster now. Surely it's a joke. It's been a couple months since we recorded, but there's no way Van suddenly started loving shitty online personalities out of the blue, Spencer reasoned. Just as Brian and Spencer began to consider the cumbersome task of getting back out of their chairs to go inside and check on Van, the studio door whipped open violently. While the two of them hadn't seen their friend in a while, it was still a bit of a shock when Van's entrance revealed a long, thick beard hanging from his chin. I just shaved it. It was a little thicker, but
Mine actually
trimmed.
was pretty huge until 2 days ago.
Nice. Van studied Brian and Spencer's faces before covering up a brief look of irritation with a smile. Ugh. Do I have to say this?
Yeah, you have to say everything I put in there.
Bazinga, Van exclaimed, popping down in his seat and propping his feet up on the desk, sending his mouse and keyboard to the floor in the process. I took a bit longer getting ready to record than I expected. I stumbled upon a fan-written Facebook post ranking the top 10 characters in the Marvel universe, and I just couldn't resist sneaking a peek. You know how it is with us millennials. Brian and Spencer shot each other a look of concern as Van continued. I know we planned on recording our Caroline in the City episodes today, but I just got a different idea I want to run by you guys. It would be a bit of work, but if we took some quick notes, we could cover the first 2 episodes of Georgie and Mandy's first marriage and really capitalize on the moment it's having right now. I assume we've already watched them, so all we really need to do is summarize our thoughts. I could even host. What is that?
Keep reading.
Okay, all right. Oh, fair enough. What the fuck is George and Mandy's first marriage? Spencer finally asked, breaking a lingering silence born of confusion. Good one, Spencer, Van cackled, slapping his knee firmly while shaking his head and jarring his beard loose in the process. His beard is falling off, Spencer whispered to Brian across the partition. Why is he wearing a fake beard? Before Brian could answer, Van gestured to a cardboard box in the corner of the studio. Wait until you guys see these. You're going to love this. Van rose from his chair and opened the box with great delight, pulling out a pair of tank tops and tossing each one to each of his co-hosts. GMFM? Brian asked while reading the front of the tank top he held up in front of him. Brian felt certain that none of the BoobTube boys had ever worn a sleeveless garment in earnest before, yet Van seemed excited about the prospect now. Duh, silly. George and Mandy's first marriage, Van exclaimed, ripping off his Hawaiian shirt to get his new tank top on as soon as possible. It's that fucking Big Bang Theory and Young Sheldon spinoff, Brian whispered to Spencer after doing a covert Google search. Okay, there it is.
That's what that's called.
That's called, what, George and Mandy's first marriage?
Georgie.
Oh, like the...
It's important because George is a name.
Is Georgie the kid who died from the clown? Right?
What?
Yeah, in It, yeah.
Oh, in It. I thought this was a Big Bang Theory thing. I was really confused. I was like, is Georgie David from Roseanne?
There are characters in that named Georgie and Mandy? Spencer wondered aloud. Guys, save your little jokes for the podcast, Van interrupted. That was a joke. There isn't a soul in these beautiful United States of America who doesn't know who Georgie and Mandy are. Plus, we need to hurry up and change so we can do a photo shoot for Insta in these sweet new tanks. I like how I did two shorthand things there instead of saying tank tops.
Oh, yeah, you're
tanks.
You're really leaning into
Insta.
this person.
Noticing the panic in his co-host's eyes, Van pivoted. Okay. You guys don't seem too excited about the killer tanks. We can put it off until later. I saved the best news for last. We have a new sponsor. A real sponsor? Not just a thing where you hand us a can of stewed spinach or whatever? Brian asked with hope in his voice before shaming himself for enjoying the idea of traditional success. Embarrassed, Brian rambled aloud to no one about the evils of advertising to make himself feel better. No doy, it's real, Bri, Van assured him. It's a new workout supplement called Yoked versus Woke. It contains actual ham meat and bits of American soil, and I think it was even featured on Rogan, Van explained as his co-host began to panic again. Plus 30 cents from each bottle goes to help Elon Musk build a big round race car that will let him drive to the moon faster. You can't stand Elon Musk, Spencer replied, tired of whatever game Van was playing and ready to discuss the Caroline in the City episodes that had so emotionally moved him. I know you're just joking, but this has gone on a bit long, hasn't it? I need to get back home to eat more breakfasts. Oh, Spencer, the only jokes I know of are the zingers Elon brings on X every day. The mind on that guy, I swear, Van said in admiration. I'll read the ad for Yoked versus Woke myself if you guys are going to be pussies about the whole thing. Suddenly, a loud banging sound came from behind Brian and Spencer, clearly emanating from the bathroom on the other side of the wall. Is everything okay in there? Spencer asked Van. Van was quick to respond. Why, of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? I'm Van, and no one is tied up and trapped inside the bathroom. I'll put a stop to your speculation just as fast as Big Boss put a stop to nuclear warhead transportation in Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. Puzzled, Brian and Spencer looked at one another. While everything else about Van had seemed distorted the entire night, his obsessive knowledge of the Metal Gear Solid franchise appeared intact. It was then that Brian realized Van could have Googled Metal Gear plot points just as easily as he'd used a search engine to deduce what in the hell Georgie and Mandy's first marriage was earlier.
Oh, man, I see what's going on here.
You looked that up on your phone just now, didn't you? Brian asked Van in an accusatory tone. No, you're both aware that I am quite a fan of the Metal Gear Solid franchise and its iconic main character, Jake the Snake Eater Roberts. I won't stand idly by during such an affront to my character, Van said, annoyed. Okay, then fine. How many pounds of mosquitoes can a bat eat in a day, Van? Spencer asked quickly, knowing that the real Van would be able to recite the answer to this bit of trivia in his sleep. Van laughed. Nice try, Spencer. Like anyone would look up how many mosquitoes a bat can eat and then talk about it all the time. For all I know, bats don't even eat mosquitoes. The man in front of Brian and Spencer was not Van, and they were sure of it now. Brian sat closest to the studio door and was thus closer to rescuing the real Van from the bathroom he was almost certainly trapped in. Spencer understood a distraction was needed in order for Brian to make it out before the imposter could stop him. What are your thoughts on cancel culture, Van? Spencer asked, making an educated guess that the imposter would have passionate feelings about the term. Oh, don't get me started. These sensitive babies are trying to tell us we can't even let a broad know when she's got a nice... The imposter continued his rant in a fervor, giving Brian just enough time to get to the studio door. You can't leave, the imposter shouted as he rose to his feet and his gross fake beard fell halfway off. There's no one tied up in the bathroom or anything, so don't even bother looking. Realizing he was caught, the imposter sat back down and decided to continue assaulting Spencer with his cancel culture rant with whatever time he had left. Moments later, Brian and Van burst into the studio. Van instantly threw up at the sight of the Mr. Beast poster in the corner of the room he'd worked so hard on. "What was your goal here?" Van asked between gulps of water as he tried to hydrate following his Mr. Beast purge. By the way, credit to Brian for putting Mr. Beast every single time in the story as one word, Mr. Beast, all together.
I had to go back and correct it to do that, too, after I Googled what his name was.
He would try and fix it or whatever.
Yeah.
No, you've done it correctly. The imposter paused before offering an explanation. "I hate to admit it, but I just wanted to be included. Ever since I guest starred on the Fateful Findings episode, I've had a taste for the limelight. I see you guys, I see Rogan, and I just want to be a part of the podcast too." "Please don't mention us with Joe Rogan," Van said, almost ready to vomit again. The imposter continued. "So I showed up here to ask Van if I could be on another episode with you guys, and he said no. He was nice enough about it, and I'll admit I reacted poorly," the imposter said apologetically. "You tied me up and locked me in my fucking bathroom," Van yelled. "I said I reacted poorly. Ugh, you snowflakes are so touchy. Anyway, then I realized I was in a real pickle. I saw headlights, so I knew Brian and Spencer were here to record. Then Katie came into the living room, and I had to threaten her so she'd pretend like things were normal when she answered the door. It was a whole ordeal, took a lot out of me," the imposter explained. "And that's before I had to lug this guy into the bathroom," he added, pointing at Van. "Then I went out into the studio figuring I could just tell you two I was filling in for Van a day, and when it was clear neither of you remembered me from the Fateful Findings episode, I decided to pretend I was actually Van," the imposter added. "I know we look kind of similar." "Wait, so Van is a real guy? He isn't just you?" Spencer asked Van, bewildered.
That would be the first thing I would ask.
The imposter answered before Van was able to catch his breath from his latest round of Mr. Beast pukes. "Of course I'm a real guy. This is insulting. Van hired me because he didn't want to talk about that scene with Neil Breen and the teen girl in Fateful Findings. I told you guys my name was Vran when we met. I was on one episode with you guys. It's the whole reason why my dream is to be a professional podcaster like you guys and Rogan." "Please don't mention us with Joe Rogan," Van, Brian, and Spencer responded in unison. "I am so hurt that none of you remembered me. It wasn't even that long ago," Vran cried. "We seriously just thought you were Van in an ugly fake beard," Brian said. "How did you find a guy who looks exactly like you but always wears a fake beard?" Brian asked Van. "I thought it was funny he looked like me, and I didn't want to be rude and ask if his beard was fake. I just assumed you guys understood Vran was a separate human being," Van said. "You guys are all a bunch of fucking assholes. I'm going to go home and watch my standard definition box set of Fear Factor DVDs. I'll start my own podcast, just you wait and see. It'll be all about Fear Factor," Vran exclaimed, shooting up from his seat and shoving his way past Van and Brian. Vran's hurried footsteps eventually disappeared into the night air. Van closed the studio door and took a breath. "Obviously, we need to pick things up first, but are you guys still good to record the Caroline in the City episodes?" "I would love to. I haven't connected with a piece of art like this in a long time," Spencer said. "In some ways, Caroline represents the fragile nature of youth, while the city represents the many challenges that lie ahead," Brian offered. "You know what? Fuck this. Let's just order a pizza and watch one of those episodes of the Kirk Cameron talk show where he eats breakfast at awful people and then makes them do a sack race." Brian and Spencer nodded in agreement, and balance felt restored.
Yeah.
"I have to get out, so I have to go somewhere."
No!
No, talk amongst yourselves.
No! So anyway, it's crazy. We were right about Yadier Molina.
I have a lot of thoughts right now, and Yadier Molina he went to the background just a little bit. After all of that, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. The idea that Vran was real all along.
Yeah, which is the whole reason I thought of the doppelganger story idea. I just randomly thought of the idea of what if the whole time that was just another person, and Van knew that the whole time and we didn't. We have a new character joining us right now.
It is I, Vran. Do you guys remember me from the time we recorded a podcast together?
You seem to have aged drastically. Now your beard is white.
Was it a different color last time? I don't recall.
I think it was just a dark, regular beard.
Kind of a vomity looking brown.
There were several beards over there. I couldn't remember which to choose from. I am Vran. What are we doing today?
Well, Van...
I have to leave. Oh, Van's back. Hi, guys.
Hey,
what
welcome
happened?
back. Oh, you're never going to believe this. But Vran, you know that guy?
The guy I just read the story about?
Yeah, he just came back.
Well, that's wild.
Mhm.
Huh, how about that? I'll bet it was wacky.
It was. It definitely was.
Huh. Beautiful story, Brian. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
That was our very first one. It involves Mr. Beast. And when I said earlier, when we were introducing the episode, that I just happened to read a name from the sheet, it was
that
Mr.
was
Beast.
it. I kind of thought it had to be.
There's really no way we're going to be able to get any more meta than that at any point. That was an impressive, like, flip-flopping between realities. At the beginning, I was not sure that hadn't really happened. And then it became a thing.
The beginning is based off real events.
It sounded very much like it. And then when I realized what you were doing with Fran, that already put me in a little bit of a different place because I remembered that whole experience and being unsettled by it. And then we get another appearance of Ran. So I'm wow.
Yeah, we're several layers deep.
What a debut for this year's Creepypasta.
Van, I was telling Spencer while Vran was here that the whole idea born of it was just what if Vran was also real? Which is why the doppelganger prompt came into, and now we know that he came into existence. And then it became, what do I do with us as characters? And so Vran obviously got to be opposite of you, like Bizarro Van. Spencer and I just got to be kind of exaggerated versions of ourselves.
Sure, and to be honest, I know that we're going in doing doppelganger stories. I didn't even think about it with that story, so mind blown even more. That was a doppelganger story.
Yes.
Impressive. All right, well, we're moving on to our next one. I believe, Spencer, you're going to be reading my story?
Yeah, this one is called The Battle of Felucia. Is it Felucia?
Felucia, yeah.
Felucia. The Battle of Felucia by Van Lee. Not Vran.
Not Vran.
Vran did not write this.
No,
this is interesting. Can't write.
Because we've done a thing in Creepypasta episodes in years past with Spencer.
Yeah, we have done a thing with me.
My story, but somebody suggested something a little different this time, so...
Okay.
I guess you'll be reading my doppelganger story.
I see now it's all kind of coming clear what's going to be happening.
That's okay. Have a good time. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's a new year.
Yeah.
You know, we kept it going a while.
I'm actually kind of excited that I've been freed from that responsibility. So
listeners
good.
from previous years know exactly what we're talking about, but we shan't say it explicitly because let's leave whatever gets explicit for later.
Yeah.
And it will. It will get pretty explicit.
Prep yourself, Brian.
I am excited to hear you handle that material this time. I'm ready. That's good.
Probably going to get too horny, though.
That is always a struggle.
Yeah.
Without further ado, The Battle of Felucia by Van Lee. It had been 2 straight years of hard, deadly war. The enemy won battles. The good guys won battles. But in the end, no one was close to victory. Yet the soldiers for both sides fought on, taking orders from their battle-hardened generals, and in the case of our heroes, the mystical cabal of religious leaders who were in charge of the war, held in check only by the governmental board that claimed to be in charge. "Captain?" asked a voice to the left of the broad-shouldered man. "Yes," the captain replied. Oh, in his thick New Zealand accent. Okay. Yes. What is it? Now I'm German, I think. "Sir, it appears you and your regiment will be needed for a special mission courtesy of General Koth. He has asked that you report to him at command immediately." The captain sighed and said, very, I'm thinking of him as a New Zealand man now, and I can't even do it.
I mean, feel free if you want, but you don't have to.
I don't know if I can pull it off. And
that's a tough one for a full story.
And in written sentence, probably not. The captain sighed and said, "Very well, Corporal. Inform the command. I'm on my way." The captain had only just arrived at the battlefield in Felucia, hoping to take a bit of time to take in the surroundings and get a lay of the land before setting to business. But this is how it always goes for the man who had shown more promise at the academy than any of his brothers in war. He was part of the 501st Regiment that was known for getting the tough jobs done. Like most of the battalions, the men all gave each other nicknames, and his was no exception. There was Fives, who believed in doing what was right according to his strict internal code. Echo, who was a technical specialist and as hard a fighter as any. And many others like Hawk, Boomer, Kix. That's with an X, by the way.
Like the cereal.
Editor's note.
Mom tested...
Children approved.
Something.
Pet boys
Is that
approved.
Kix?
I think.
Yeah, I think so.
That should have been shoes. Okay, sorry.
Toop and Dogma. All good men, all excellent fighters, and all part of the best damn unit the war has or will ever see.
Like Bret Hart.
The captain wasn't much for nicknames, so he often told his men just to call him by his rank. But after a particularly rough mission which saw our hero's quick thinking and skill save the entire crew at the last second, the men told him he's getting a nickname whether he wants it or not. and his legendary complaints afterwards are what caused his men to start calling him Rex, both because of his tyrant-like demeanor when he's annoyed and because of the ancient connotations of Rex meaning king, as that's exactly what he was in their eyes. They would do anything for their king. Captain Rex hopped off the shuttle which had arrived at the command center and headed towards a cloaked figure, which could only be the religious garb of the warrior General Koth. He was correct in his assumption, and after meeting out some commands, the general turned to Rex and beckoned him into his nearby quarters, where they could speak in peace and quiet, and more importantly, away from any recording devices. General Koth gestured for the captain to sit and asked if he wanted anything to drink, but being all business, Rex immediately asked what this was all about. Koth sighed and said, "Captain, you're not going to like this, but I've got a mission for you, and you only." "What about my men?" asked Rex. And Koth told him his men were to be reassigned to a different commander for the time being, and after some grumbling about this, Rex finally moved on and asked the general for details. "You're going in undercover, and it's an assassination mission," Koth finally told him. "Sir, how could I go in undercover? I'll be recognized immediately," Rex asked. The general then went over the plans of the mission. It turns out some of the soldiers were growing disillusioned with the war, and after several secret ops were uncovered by the enemy, leading to the deaths of many good men, the War Council needed someone they could trust to get to the bottom of this and do it right, nice and clean. This soldier would be going undercover with a regiment that was believed to be responsible for the war failures. "Very well, General. When are we commencing this mission?" asked Rex. "Operation Doppelganger commences as soon as you're ready to depart, Captain."
This is the prompt. Doppelganger. Huh?
Yeah, there we go. There we go. It's in there.
Buried it, couple pages in here. "Keep the details to yourself, but explain to your men they'll be under the lead of Commander Apo when they report for duty tomorrow. Oh, and Rex," General Koth looked the captain in the eyes, "this is a big one. I don't think I need to tell you what failure would mean for our side in the war." "Understood, sir. I won't fail," the captain said, with no hint of fear in his voice. It was about a week later, and after the military papers had reported that Captain Rex was taking a much-needed month-long vacation, the man himself had allowed his hair to grow out to a fine stubble, which helped distinguish him from his usual bald-headed look. He also received a few temporary facial tattoos, which, though he'd never gotten any before, many of the men under him had used this as a means to distinguish themselves. The ink he had chosen was that of a roaring hellcat on the right side of his neck. It peaked just above his armor. It was definitely something your eyes were drawn to when you met him. The Hellcat was selected because he chose for his covert personality to be known as Fangs.
Cool. This is a pretty cool nickname, huh?
As he'll explain, was brought about because during a skirmish in the east, he was forced to drag a fellow wounded soldier with a rope tied around the soldier's waist, and the other end in Fang's teeth, while using his hands to give the men cover fire.
That's pretty badass.
It is.
Dragging a guy with a rope, shooting two guns at once. Come on, awesome.
I think
right?
That's some imagery.
I got a new thing to shoot for.
This story would both establish Israel as a hero and a man worthy of trust. "Sergeant Fangs, is it?" asked a man who bore the signets of a captain in the army and a familiar gruff New Zealand accent, another New Zealand accent. Rex responded, "That's right, Captain." "Sergeant Fangs reporting for duty. Where do you want me, sir?" The captain furrowed his brow. "Well, Sergeant, honestly, we're a very tight-knit group here in the 21st Nova Corps, and we don't typically like having men forced upon us, but your record is spotless, and you seem like a man who doesn't mess around. If I'm right in that regard, maybe you'll fit in here. But know this, we are brothers, Sergeant, and we take care of our family." "Understood, sir," offered up Rex. The captain thought for a moment, gritting his teeth before sighing and saying, "I'm CT-1138. You may refer to me as Captain Bakara. When I say jump, you jump. When I say stand there and die, you better damn well stand there and die. But I'll never ask that of you, Sergeant, as long as you take care of your brothers." The captain beckoned Rex over to a map on the table between them, pointing at a building labeled Barracks. "The men are just getting back from patrol, so I want you to meet them in the barracks. They'll get you up and running. We've got reports of the enemy in a nearby sector, and your first mission will be scouting the area. Dismissed." Over the following 2 weeks, Rex got to know the men of the 21st Nova Corps, and they got to know Fangs. The group was a lot like his old gang in the 501st, but there was an air of superiority amongst them. They weren't open about it, but you could tell, just by their sarcasm and their questioning of orders from high command, The word just didn't quite sit right with them. And they took to him quickly as well. In just his second mission with the group, they managed to covertly sabotage an entire refueling depot near an enemy outpost, which allowed the good guys to gain a foothold in a previously lost territory. But even progress was looked upon with a bit of distaste among the 21st. The men seemed sick of all the killing and dying. It was late on the 16th night deployed with the new group that Rex found his opening. A particularly surly trooper that went by the nickname Toolbox had been out drinking in his off-duty time, which is frowned upon by most soldiers in the war.
That's a bad nickname.
Yeah,
How would you like to be called Toolbox?
Unless I was fucking built like that, I wouldn't want to be called it. If I was, I'd probably feel like you can call me whatever you want. I'll just destroy you, right?
Yeah, I'll just run. You can fill me with wrenches or I'll run you over.
I'm a rectangle. You never see that shape of person.
Rectangle?
Yeah.
Not really. A Booth, but that's it.
Yeah, he's kind of like that.
He'd be a toolbox.
Yeah.
You call Booth Toolbox, I bet he'd go, okay.
Toolbox Booth.
But this loosened his tongue enough that he let slip that maybe there's a chance they aren't the good guys in all of this. But a fellow trooper nicknamed Bottles quickly slapped Toolbox on the back of the head and told him shut up before looking around nervously. Rex knew how to play this slow, though, so he ignored the remark for now, yawned and stretched before saying he was turning in for the night and heading back up to his bunk. As he lay there thinking of his next move, he suddenly noticed that the barracks was nearly empty. He checked his comm unit, murmured to himself, "It's 2300 hours. Where is everyone?" Before sitting up to look around. The only other people in the room were a sleeping soldier nicknamed Sloth, because he really likes to sleep, and a retired soldier who was there gathering trash and cleaning up. What's the retired soldier's nickname?
Stinky, because he smells bad.
Because he's retired.
No, Stinky because he smells good, but people wanted to rib him.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Get it?
Ironically.
Opposite.
Yeah. Rex told the cleaning man that he was
Stinky.
restless. Oh, yeah, that's right. Rex told Stinky, the cleaning man, that he was restless and was going for a walk. And the old fellow grabbed him by the arms and said, "If you know what's good for you, you'll get right back in bed and stay the hell away from the lookout post. Do you hear me?" In a growling, also New Zealand accent. It's funny how all these New Zealand people sound like me. But Rex just shook his head and went on his way. See, if Brian had been reading this, he would be taking a crack at all this right now.
Yeah,
He'd be doing
be.
the New
That's true.
Zealands.
One thing you can say about me is
You don't shy away from a New Zealand
I
accent.
fucking try.
That's why your nickname is Crack, because you take a crack
Yeah,
at it.
any accent you put on the page, I mean, I'm trying it and it's gonna suck.
He took the long way around the camp so that he could keep an eye out for anyone following him. Once he was confident the coast was clear, he approached the lookout post, which was strangely alight and acting as a beacon, drawing him towards it. Out in front was a trooper by the name of Dogger, and he just happened to be someone Rex had warmed up too quickly.
Probably the name, you know?
Sounds like Dauber.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. I was just thinking it's like a human dog.
You can read his, that would be cool. Or you can read his voice as, "Oh, gee, guys."
Okay, sure. Rather than sneak in, the captain decided he would try his luck convincing Dogger to let him in freely. After all, he'd spent weeks proving himself to these guys, and by now they were going to trust him. Dogger just about leapt out of his armored boots when Rex approached from the side and asked him if everything was going okay. Dogger's quavering New Zealand accent whispered to Rex, "You shouldn't be here." But Rex pressed on. "Why not? What's going on, Dogger? Thought we were brothers," Rex pressed. As Rex was now right at the front door to the post, he could hear voices. They weren't necessarily speaking, but it was definitely the men of the regiment making some sort of noise. Dogger's face sank. "On Fangs, don't be like that. Of course we're brothers. It's just you're still pretty new here. And I'm definitely from New Zealand. And we are your typical squadron." I'm working out the Patrick voice as we go.
Pretty good.
"How so?" asked Rex. "How so?" asked Rex. See, I don't mind it in those short sentences.
It's just hard to do long
I don't want
ones,
the
yeah.
whole thing. "Never mind that. Just get back to the barracks and forget you saw anything," Dogger told the man. Fine, said Rex. "But Dogger, if you can't trust a man outside of battle, how can you trust him when your life depends on it? I've done everything I can for the mean of this battalion, and I'll do anything else I have to. I'm 21st Nova Corps, aren't I? And the 21st Nova Corps is the best of the best." Rex turned to leave, but before he took a step, Dogger grabbed him by the arm. "Wait," Dogger sighed. "Look, I could get in serious trouble for what I'm about to do, but damn it, you're right. 21st Nova Corps, trust its men, and now it's time for you to..." Occasionally, I need to realign for the Patrick voice,
Right.
and I'm,
"No, it's time for you." That was good.
And now it's time for you to become one of us for real. Dogger punched a code into the panel on the wall, and the thick door to the installation slid open, revealing a short hallway with a door at the end. Go in and earn your stripes, Sergeant, Dogger said, closing the door behind him. In the small, poorly lit hallway, the voices Rex heard earlier were clearer now, and while some of them were talking, the undercover soldier realized most of them were moans and grunts. And not moans and grunts of pain. He slowly ambled to the door at the end. I see what happened.
Yeah, seems like you were prepared after all, weren't you, Van? You it's all worked out how you wanted it to.
I don't know what you're talking about.
He slowly ambled to the door at the end of the room, taking in every detail he could process as his heart rate began to beat faster. He pressed the button, and the door slid open via a part in the middle with a hydraulic whoosh, and a vivid dark blue light washed over him. Before him were the men of the 21st Nova Corps, each and every one of them aside from Dogger and Sloth, and each and every one of them was nude and in the throes of pleasure with one another.
You know, they say if you can't go bigger, like, what's the point?
Right, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Once you've gone so many places, what justifies a sequel?
Sure.
So I understand why you went this direction with your story.
On one side of the room, Rex saw Kix with his face buried in the crotch of Shifter. On the opposite side, Spectre was thrusting roughly as Kips was on all fours in front of him, shouting, "Harder, harder!" Harder.
Yeah, there you go.
No one even noticed Rex at first, as the captain merely stood in the doorway shocked. He didn't know what he expected to see in this lookout post, but it certainly wasn't this. After a moment, one of the other sergeants in the company, a joyful, peppy man named Buzzer, spotted the undercover Rex and said, "Thanks!" So the newest sergeant finally joins the 21st for our tougher missions, eh? But Rex was still dumbfounded and just stood there taking in the whole scene, aghast, with mouth wide open in disbelief. The captain finally came back to reality when Buzzer grabbed him by the hand and led him past the swarm of hot, wriggling bodies to a quiet corner off to the side. Rex was still in his sleepwear, and he had never wished to be in his blaster-proof armor more than this very moment. But he wasn't sure even that armor could protect him from what was going on in this room right now. Buzzer saw the look in Rex's eyes and said, "Don't worry, Fangs. I won't sink my teeth into you just yet. Why don't we start slowly and make sure you're comfortable?" He reached down and grasped the waistline of Rex's military-issued sleeping pants, and Rex finally snapped out of it, grabbing the other sergeant by the wrist and looking into his eyes. "I don't think that Rex mumbled, but Buzzer just smiled. Said, "We're the same rank, Sergeant. You can't boss me around."
You're getting sultry. I like it.
The vibe's taking me there.
What
What can I say? With a firm pull, Buzzer dropped Rex's pants to the ground. And suddenly Rex realized he was fully erect. He'd never had relations with a person before. After all, the military members of the Clone Army created by the Kaminoans were created with the need for procreation removed from their genetics. Why would he need pleasure in this manner? He derived all the pleasure he needed from successful operations in war, not bedroom excursions. But right at this moment, he felt a rush of emotions run through his clone brain, and while he was not quite excited or eager, he was titillated. Suddenly, Rex realized what these men were doing was against not just their genetic makeup, but also their military code. By now, Buzzer had gone down on his knees and was looking up into Rex's eyes. And Rex said, "This is against regulation. We can't be doing this." Buzzer just smiled and got to his feet. He reached over to a hollow communicator nearby and handed it to Rex. "Watch it," implored Buzzer. Rex, with his pants still around his ankles, hit the play button on the device and was met with the face of the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, the former senator from Naboo, Sheev Palpatine. I don't know why I can't say that better, but I can't.
Sheep Ovaltine. Well, I mean, it's not a name.
No.
To be fair.
The man who was effectively the leader of the entire clone army began to issue a decree. "My wonderful clone troopers," said Palpatine, "the time has finally come to push for the end of this war. You have all fought well and will be rewarded in the new republic. My precious clones. Execute Order 69. Rex felt a tingling in the back of his head. He knew he was still Captain Rex pretending to be Sergeant Fangs on an infiltration mission. He still had all of his training. His values and life was still the same. But from the back of his brain came a fog. And this fog quickly washed over everything in his body. And suddenly he knew what he had to do. He turned to face a grinning Buzzer and tossed the communicator with Chancellor Palpatine's message, repeating itself over and over. He grabbed Buzzer by the shoulders and forced him onto his knees. By now, his fully blood-engorged member was harder than it had ever been. Buzzer may have supposedly been the same rank as Fangs, but this was not Sergeant Fang standing here with his rock-hard cock now shining in the blue light. It was Captain Rex. "Good soldiers follow orders," Rex said to Buzzer, "and your orders have been assigned." A wave of pleasure washed across the ARC Trooper Rex's body and mind as Buzzer took Rex into his mouth. Rex was astonished that Buzzer was able to fit the whole cock in his mouth without his gag reflex kicking in, but he was delighted for the surprise nonetheless. Buzzer's head bobbed back and forth and even spiraled a little, leading to a sensation Rex didn't think was possible. After a bit, Rex couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed Buzzer by the shoulders, lifting him up and turning him around, pushing his chest down to the table in front of him. The captain grabbed Buzzer by his waist and planted his feet firmly before roughly plunging his cock deep into the man's ass. Buzzer let out an oomph, not necessarily of pure pleasure, but a little bit out of discomfort and pain.
And some WD-40.
"Easy," the bottom clone yelled, and suddenly Rex felt a pang of embarrassment. This was his brother. He didn't want to hurt his brother, but his animalistic side once again took over, and he began to plunge in and out of Buzzer's opening, slowly at first, but firmly and roughly over time. By then, Buzzer had opened up to take all of Rex's manhood, and the pleasure began to overwhelm him. He let out an orgasmic moan, and while the captain continued his aggressive thrusting, Buzzer came with a thick orange-tinted clone jism, covering the still-repeating holocommunicator visage of Chancellor Palpatine as he said, "Execute Order 69. "Watch those jizz rockets." Rex heard another clone trooper yell behind him as another blast of orange goo shot from a climaxing clone. Rex realized Buzzer was spent, but he had not yet achieved orgasm himself, so he pushed the heavily breathing sergeant away from him and turned to look at the room. He noticed the trooper who was still wearing all of his armor, save for the codpiece, standing with his arms at his hips and penis thrust out. 2 clones on their knees in front of him with one cupping and licking at his balls, while the other worked the shaft. Rex pushed past several quivering, sweaty bodies of men that looked exactly like him. He approached the trooper still in his armor and said to the man, "Corporal Shells?" The armored man turned his head to face Rex and saluted his superior officer. "Sir, yes, sir," he said as the other 2 troopers continued to work on an exposed dick. Rex pushed the other 2 troopers away, pointed to the man. "You have new orders from your superior. Get down and take this for the team." Shells stood at attention, saluted once again, and then turned to expose his backside to the sergeant. Sure, it was just like every other backside in this room, but to Rex it was the most beautiful ass he'd ever seen.
They're all the same guy.
Yeah.
It's the exact same with minor differences.
Rex shouted, "For the Republic," before once again ramming his rock-hard member into the asshole in front of him. To his delight, Shells was able to absorb every ounce with little resistance, and his moans of ecstasy implied he too was enjoying the experience. Rex slammed a hand down on the back of Shells, which caused the trooper to arch his back and stick his ass further up into the air. He yelled out, "Victory is imminent!" And then with a series of rhythmic thrusts, Rex finally reached his first ever climax. He felt as if every ounce of stress he had ever experienced presently bottled itself up and was blasted out through the tip of his penis and into the man in front of him. Shells moaned with delight as Rex stumbled back into a nearby chair. He looked about the room at the chaotic scene and noticed heaving bodies struggling to breathe, and all at the point of exhaustion. He had been in many battles and watched many of his clone friends die, and he briefly chuckled to himself as he thought this scene looked an awful lot like the aftermath of a battle. Only this time it was a different type of mess to clean up. Rex took a moment to regain his energy before standing up, finding his clothes, and after putting them on confidently marching back through the room of spent clone troopers once again, muttering under his breath, "Good troopers follow orders." That was the Battle of Felucia by Van Lee. And unwittingly, thinking that I had traded that responsibility with Brian this year, I got it again.
No, 4 times in a row.
How long did it take before you realized it might have been Star Wars?
Actually, you buried it very well in that one. Yeah.
I knew you wouldn't be familiar with the clones because that's slightly more in-depth, but yeah, the Rex is the clone. A lot of those are real clones from the show.
I see.
And all the quotes, the "For the Republic!" And
Eve Koth shows up.
Eve Koth, you caught him, Brian. Yeah, that's a Jedi. All the religious generals.
So
Yeah.
you were hoping that Brian would get a chance at this year, though.
No. This is all planned out in advance. I texted Brian and I said, look, I knew I wanted to trick Spencer again. So I said, why don't we do a
Here's
whole
what
thing?
to suggest, essentially.
Yeah, the suggestion was, okay, I'll come in and I'll say, let's do the prompt stories first. And then I want you, Brian, to say, well, why don't we have the opposite person read them this year?
Yeah, and I remembered which direction to say after a
Yeah.
brief moment in my brain where I was like, which one was I supposed to say again?
Yeah, because same thing here. I was like, am I going to mess this up? Because I wanted it to be that way so that way you would get it and I could feign being like, oh no.
You did a
this
great job.
sucks.
I was fooled. I was like, yeah, I'm absolved.
And
of
I was
this duty.
also had the knowledge that doing it that way would make my stories go to the people I wanted them to, which
That
helped
worked out
me.
for you, too.
Yeah.
And I mean, it does make sense reading opposite from last year. So next year, I don't know what I'm going to do to fool you. I might just lead off with it.
Who knows? Yeah.
We'll see.
You might not do it.
That's cute.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's that happened again.
Yeah, it sure did. and it really was like the scale is widening. We've got full orgies now.
Whole
Yeah.
room full
Yeah.
of people.
Who knows what's next?
I thought about having Kieti Mundi, Brian, show up
Yeah,
and
that
start
would've been-
fucking in the room,
He'd
too.
be good at it, too.
Well, in canon, he fucks as a Jedi.
Yeah.
He fucks a lot.
Of course he does.
Can they do that?
He can. He has like, there's
Well,
debate
he
as to whether
certainly
anybody
can.
There's a legit debate from George Lucas saying, they can have relations. They just can't form commitments.
I see.
I don't know what it's like, so I was not able to illustrate it on screen.
But in universe, Kieti Mundi, who has this big penis head with
Yeah.
a little like tuft of hair at the top.
He's a cool guy, you can tell.
His species only has a male born to it, like 1 out of every thousand births. So males are allowed to marry to propagate that species, even if they're a Jedi.
All right.
Too bad Kit Fisto wasn't involved. Seems like a natural fit.
I almost did that, but I was like, if I do the 20th, by the way, 501st, 21st Nova Corps,
Yeah.
those are real clone battalions from the show. But I thought if I named it the Fisto one and I was like, oh, you're going to go to General Fisto's so-and-so.
Yeah.
Might have, yeah, a little too much foreshadowing.
everyone having a New Zealand accent, the Camino connection there.
Because they're all voiced by, they're based on Jango Fett, who is played by Tamora Morrison.
Yeah.
But also they
from
have
New Zealand.
They have a white guy pretending to do it in the cartoon. But anyway.
Say that's a deserving addition to the collection of Star Wars erotica. So
Yeah,
well
toss it in
done.
there. Thank you. All right, Brian, you're up next.
All right, I will be reading Crash Brothers, a creepypasta by Spencer Hendricks. It is titled as such, that's a very regal title. I like it. The full.
I like the A Creepypasta
Yeah.
by.
I feel like we should have a little subtitle on all these. A creepypasta.
And let's add, Spencer started the trend this year by doing a full page with huge font dedicated to the
After
title.
I printed these out for him, I told him, I was like, I think I should have done this.
It's a good idea.
It's like Christmas when you get your presents too early, you might start peeking in there. You kind of rip it open a little bit and you look inside. I was afraid that if we leave our actual content available on the first page, we're all going to be sneaking peeks, getting spoilers.
You effectively stopped that, and I
Yeah.
copied you, so it works out for
That's
us.
good.
Fuck you, Brian.
Well, fuck you too. Parker! Jeremy Laramie shouted, his athletic voice. Let me start over.
Jeremy Laramie.
Parker! Jeremy Laramie shouted, his athletic voice echoing throughout the mostly empty gym. You suck, Parker! Jeremy shouted some more. A handful of physical specimens standing near him chuckled at his creative takedown. At the other end of the gym, Francois Parker quietly continued his solo shoot-around session. The Flapjack High School varsity boys basketball team was wrapping up the first practice of the new season. The formal activities were over with for the day, leaving the newly anointed team members free to mingle as they saw fit.
Is like a flapjack. Is that a thing? Because that sounds like a thing. Like, school basketball, they give them all sorts of weird ass names.
Oh, this is just Flapjack High.
Oh,
That's the name of the high
that's the
school.
name of the high school. Okay.
Like pancakes.
Because, they've got the 3rd and 4th graders are called the Flapjacks,
Oh,
and
yeah,
the 5th
yeah.
and the 6th graders
Well, he
are
didn't
called
make
the
varsity,
Cracker
but he did
Dolls.
make Flapjack.
Yeah, exactly.
No, this is just Flapjack High. And you'll notice the Jeremy Laramie thing in Flapjack High, I didn't put a lot of effort into making real names in this.
It's amazing already.
So get used to that. Even Francois Parker is not something someone would be named. You would not hear Francois Parker. It just wouldn't happen.
Well, that means all of our stories have names that aren't names in them, that's for sure. Francois had chosen to get in a few more shots by himself while the stars of the team strategized how to best foster an exclusive vibe within the group. As the final team member selected after tryouts concluded, It was painfully clear to Francois he was not going to be welcomed into the inner circle. He tried to ignore the shouts from the other end of the gym. Jeremy was a local celebrity, probably the best hooper in the state.
Jeremy Laramie?
Jeremy Laramie.
Okay.
And would soon have the luxury of choosing which university program was going to pay his tuition in exchange for him to score points. There was no bridging that gap, Francois knew. He had no plans of even trying. In the middle of the court, Coach Oldman was signaling the players together.
Oldman.
All right, men, he shouted, because it was the only volume he knew after decades of coaching high school basketball. Great first day. A couple more like this and we'll beat the tar out of the St. Livingston Squirrels on opening night.
The least intimidating name for a basketball team or sports team. I love it.
Jeremy did a perfect imitation of the very distinctive sound squirrels make, and the rest of the team followed suit, laughing. Francois remained silent. Coach Oldman grew quiet and looked around at the team, making eye contact with each player and nodding gravely. I don't say this often, he continued, but I can't remember the last time I had a more talented team. Coach Oldman had used this exact line just a few years ago, but he thought he was being sincere. He had managed to stand directly underneath one of the gym's high bay lights, so he seemed to almost glow as he spoke. His few remaining wisps of white hair had all but disappeared in the light's intensity. I don't expect to lose a single goddamn game this year, he growled. Jeremy hooted and the rest of the team followed suit. Francois remained silent. The Flapjack High mascot was an owl.
That's why they hooted. It's their battle cry.
Flapjack is
The Flapjack
an
owl.
owl.
Mhm. Yeah,
No,
I
that's
like that.
great, because I just thought it was hooted as a verb, just
Oh,
to
sure,
say-
sure.
Yeah.
I just bought into it when it came out, but no, you're right.
Everyone enjoy your evening and your day off tomorrow, but I want you to get your rest on Friday. No necking with Mary Sue or dancing with Betty Jane. We start practice on Saturday at 9 sharp, and if there is one thing I will not tolerate, it's lateness. Just see how many minutes you get on my team if you're late. He made eye contact with each member of the team once again, awkwardly looking away from Francois quickly. He did not expect Francois to play much, whether he was on time or not. The speech done, Coach Oldman had everyone bring their hands in and hoot one last time. Then it was off to the showers. Francois lingered, returning to the side of the gym he'd left for the huddle. He found the ball, considered putting it up, and then decided to get a few more shots in. He was in no hurry. He liked the way the ball sounded, hitting the floor in an empty gym. He took a shot. It went in. He made his last 10 shots without anyone noticing. As he retrieved the ball and set for another shot, the lights went out. Unfazed, he took a few dribbles and launched another three-pointer. It went in, 11 in a row. Nice shooting, a man's voice, surprisingly close, broke the silence in the gym. Francois spun around, startled. Thanks, Francois said. He recognized Coach Hannigan.
Oh, no. There it is.
One of Coach Oldman's assistants, but had never spoken with him before. He hadn't even realized anyone else on the team had stuck around until he heard the voice. I've been watching you. You haven't missed much all day. Coach Hannigan retrieved the ball for Francois and tossed it back to him. Don't let me interrupt you. You've got a nice rhythm going.
I'm really glad you've settled into that voice because that fits what we know of that character.
Francois noticed when Coach Hannigan went after the ball that he was walking away with a limp. He took another shot. Swish. Coach Hannigan caught the ball and fired it right back to him, right in the shooter's pocket. He went into his motion smoothly and launched another one. Swish. Your release is a little low, Coach Hannigan observed, getting the ball back to Francois. At your size, you're going to have trouble getting your shot off if you've got someone guarding you closely. Francois nodded, taking and making another shot all the while. He'd heard this before. I like it better when I'm open, he said. Coach Hannigan laughed. Huh, son, the big man said. No one's going to leave you open. Once the word gets out what happens when you get a clean shot off. Francois hesitated. He hadn't thought anyone had paid him any attention. He had only made the team because Roy McClintock Bergelsenberry had broken his leg in a skiing accident at his family's vacation cabin in Switzerland.
One more time, Roy McClintock Bergelsberry?
Bergelsenberry.
Bergelsenberry.
Yeah.
I just kept adding another one to that when I was writing. I was like, that's not done
You
yet.
can have a couple more syllables here.
I do want to clarify that I did make stature-wise, this Hannigan is actually basketball size. We know the actual
Okay.
Hannigan in the show is like 5'7" or something.
In the Hoops Hannigan movie from Pure Flix.
This guy's like an actual basketball player size.
Everyone knew if he'd been healthy, the team would be full and have no need of Francois. He'd be the last man selected on a team that was down a man. It was almost a worse fate than not making the team at all. I've tried changing my shot, Francois finally said when he'd recovered from the surprise observation. I can't keep the accuracy with the higher release. Coach Hannigan took a moment to think about this. He limped over to a ball cart and pulled it over to Francois. Maybe we don't change the release then, he said, his tone thoughtful. Maybe we just get the shot off quicker. He grabbed a ball from the rack and tossed it to Francois, then crouched in front of him in a defensive stance. Even with the limp, Francois was struck by the sheer physical presence of Coach Hannigan. His prime athletic years were clearly behind him, but not by much. Francois, giving up several inches of height in the matchup, instantly felt smothered by the older man's presence. 2 dribbles, Coach Hannigan said. He motioned with his left hand, then his right. All you need is 2 dribbles between the hands. Then you're going to take a quick step back and let it fly, as fast as you can. Frowning, Francois tried to put Coach Hannigan's ideas into practice. His first attempt resulted in the ball getting swatted back. Get your feet back quicker, Coach Hannigan said. The second attempt was an air ball. Don't watch me, watch the rim, Coach Hannigan said. You don't need to worry about who's in front of you if you do it right. The third shot rimmed in and out. Good, Coach Hannigan shouted. The fourth attempt was nothing but net. Coach Hannigan just nodded. The fifth attempt got swatted into the bleachers. That's a reminder that you can never be lazy with this shot. Do it fast, do it right, and you'll always have space, Coach Hannigan said. Thanks, Francois said. He'd always been able to shoot, but nobody'd ever taken him seriously because of his height. We're not done yet, Coach Hannigan said in reply. What happens when I figure out that move and crowd you even more? Pass the ball? Francois asked. So just pass it every time your man pressures you? You'll be useless without the ball. Everyone, you'll know you're an off-ball threat, a one-trick pony. Francois stayed silent. He was beginning to wish Rory McClintock Bergelsenberry had never gone to Switzerland over the summer. When someone crowds you, you leave them in the dust, Coach Hannigan said, continuing the lesson. I'd rather shoot than dribble, Francois said. Pick a direction, Coach Hannigan said, ignoring the protest. That's your feint. Then 2 dribbles the other direction toward the basket like you're going inside. You're not. Get the defender off balance, then take your step-back shot again. Francois tried, but failed to get around the older man. Francois couldn't believe how fast Coach Hannigan was able to move his feet. You need to make me buy the feint, Coach Hannigan said. I'm not buying that. Francois tried again and was immediately cut off, trapped, helpless. On the next try, he didn't feint. He drove decisively to his left, took 2 dribbles, stepped back to the 3-point line, and let it loose. Swish. Coach Hannigan chuckled softly. When Francois reached to the rack for another ball, the coach waved his hand away. Now you're thinking like a scorer. All you have to do is keep practicing these moves. It'll take other teams months to stop you. By then, you'll have come up with counters. You're going to lead this team in scoring, son. Francois scoffed. He had to stop himself from putting a hand over his mouth. He hadn't meant to appear so dismissive in front of Coach Hannigan, who had just given him more basketball help in one session than anyone had in his entire life combined. I know, Coach Hannigan said. I haven't forgotten Laramie. He's still the best player. You're not going to be much help on defense, and you won't be doing a lot of passing. But you're going to lead the team in scoring. Coach Oldman has no idea. Listening to the man speak, Francois realized no one had ever given him this kind of confidence before. But if he put in the time practicing what they just worked on, he knew Coach Hannigan was right. Flapjack High had a secret weapon, an undersized sharpshooter no one could stop. Thanks, Coach, Francois said in almost a whisper. He wasn't sure how to articulate the proper level of gratitude for something so unexpected. No one had ever believed in him before. The duo started gathering the scattered balls from the training session. Francois noticed Coach Hannigan's limp seemed worse. Nothing serious, Coach Hannigan said, realizing the boy was picking up on his labored movement. Just an old injury. Some days it bothers me more than others. They gathered the remaining balls. After Francois returned the rack to its place by the bleachers and turned around, Coach Hannigan was gone. Francois barely registered anything in front of him the rest of the day. He ate dinner in silence, breezed through his arithmetic and gardening coursework, and settled into bed much easier than usual.
Flapjack High would have gardening as a class.
It wasn't so much the excitement of being a basketball star. Francois didn't expect that to change much for him. He didn't particularly want the attention, but there was something almost surreal about the time working with Coach Hannigan. Why had he never spoken to Francois before, or even really seemed to notice him at all? Had he told Coach Oldman he was going to hold an individual practice session with him, or was this a secret plan just between the two of them? Francois fell asleep pondering it all, counting the stepbacks in his head instead of sheep. The next day after school, Francois made a visit to the boys' locker room. There was no practice for the day, but he'd thought it over and he decided it would only be proper to seek Coach Hannigan out and thank him. Francois weaved his way through a maze of lockers, ignoring the smell of dirty socks, and poked his head into the first office he came across. "Where can I find Coach Hannigan?" he asked a man he didn't recognize. "I'm Coach Kick," the man said, almost screaming. "This is the soccer office, and you've interrupted my soccer plans. The basketball office is somewhere else."
Kick. Is it hyphenated?
Yes.
Okay.
And capitalized. Yes, it's a proper noun.
Oh, good.
Francois left Coach Kick alone and kept trying other offices. After many unsuccessful attempts and finding the offices of the wrestling team, the pickleball squad, and the Formula T, for teen, racing room, he finally stumbled upon the basketball department. "Coach Hannigan," he said, relieved the stressful search was finally over. "I had no idea there were so many sports at this school." Which is Flapjack High. The coach was alone in the room, bent over his desk and studying basketball charts with a magnifying glass. He seemed lost in thought and barely noticed Francois entering. No, it'll never work," Coach Hannigan said in a sigh. "They'll figure it out if we try to get 6 people out there." No one's ever thought of that before.
And looking at a chart to decide that.
With a magnifying glass. He finally looked up and saw Francois. "Yes, Parker, is it? If this is a question about your role on the team, you're better off asking Coach Oldman. I just handle the tactical side of the operation." Francois stared at Coach Hannigan, the thanks he was about to express frozen on his lips. Was this some kind of hazing process? Was it a joke? Or maybe what they'd worked on yesterday really was some kind of unspoken arrangement. He decided to push through his confusion and proceed with the original plan. "I just wanted to thank you for working with me yesterday," Francois said. "Working with you, Parker? I wasn't even at practice yesterday. I have a whole season's worth of offensive schemes to plan out. The Squirrels blew us out last year, and I will not let it happen again," he said, slamming his fist on the desk. An empty coffee mug rattled around briefly from the collision. Both Francois and Coach Hannigan watched it for a moment in silence. With a sigh, he heaved himself out of his chair. "Look, Parker, I'm sorry I blew my cork just then. I'm just feeling a lot of pressure. The Squids offered me a head coach position before the start of the season, and I turned it down to stay with the Owls. I'd like to move into coaching at the college level soon, and it's no secret, and my dreams could be about to come true. We have to be perfect this year." As Coach Hannigan paced around his desk, Francois watched him, a frown forming on his face. "You're limp," he said. "It's gone." Coach Hannigan's face went pale. "What did you say?" he asked Francois, suddenly giving him all his attention. "You were limping really bad yesterday. I can't spot it at all today." Coach Hannigan processed this information for a long moment. He purposefully crossed the room and closed the office door. "Have a seat, Parker," he said, his voice much softer now. "Is something wrong?" Francois asked. "I won't say anything about our training session yesterday if it's a problem. I just wanted to thank you. No one's ever tried to help me like that before." "Nothing's wrong at all, son," Coach Hannigan said as he settled back behind his desk. His entire demeanor had changed. He seemed more like the person he had been yesterday in the dark, empty gym. Francois felt slightly more at ease, but still full of confusion. He waited for the man to explain himself. Coach Hannigan let out a sigh and reached into his desk drawer. He searched around for a moment, pulled something out, and handed it to Francois. It was a photograph of 2 boys arm in arm, smiling. One was a clearly teenaged version of Coach Hannigan. The other was another teenaged version of Coach Hannigan. "I have a twin," Coach Hannigan said. "Just like me in every way, only better. We were inseparable growing up. We used to be so close." Francois studied the photo. They looked so happy. He couldn't help but feel some distance, some sense of sadness building within him. Whatever happened between the time the picture was taken and now, it was already clear the happiness had not lasted. "We were both stars in high school," Coach Hannigan continued. "The Twin Towers, they called us." He paused, furrowing his brow. "I don't think that nickname has ever been used in reference to anyone or anything else." He paused again to consider this, nodded, and went on. "We had it all. High school fame, high school glory, high school trophies.
All of it.
People would come up to us in the cafeteria and tell us our lunch was on them. That's not even possible, but anyway, I always knew he was better than me, that he was going places I couldn't go eventually. Back then we were doing it together and I was just enjoying the ride." He paused again, rooting around his drawer once more. This time he pulled out a half-empty bottle of liquor and poured it into his coffee mug. Then the accident happened. He took a swig of his drink and grimaced. The accident? Francois asked, completely captivated by the story. He didn't realize it, but he was clutching the photos so hard his fingertips had gone white. The accident, Coach Hannigan said again in confirmation, nodding. There was a horrible car crash. My God, the flames. Were you there? Francois asked. Were you hurt? Oh, we weren't in the car crash. We just saw it happen. My brother just had to be the hero, so he raced over to the burning car, lifted it up. It was a car full of children. They all got out unhurt. But my brother dropped the car on his leg, saving their lives. He was never able to play basketball again. Coach Hannigan took another swig of his drink, wiping away a stray tear. That's awful, Francois said. He was lost without the game he loved. Our team was lost too. I tried my best to play for both of us, but it just wasn't the same once I was only the tower. We lost the championship game. My brother never forgave himself. He broke under the strain. He turned to hard drugs. He overdosed a few months before graduation. My brother's been dead for 25 years, son. Francois gasped and shot fully upright in his chair. I know I saw him yesterday. He was kind to me. He had a limp and he looked just like you. Coach Hannigan smiled, but it was the saddest smile Francois had ever seen. Sounds exactly like my brother, all right. I know you're telling the truth. I know you met my brother yesterday. He took another drink, the biggest one yet. Only a small amount remained. Francois set the photo down on Coach Hannigan's desk gently. He studied the emotional man, thinking about recent events carefully. If all ghosts are like your brother, I'd very much like to meet other ghosts, Francois said. The man and the boy let the statement hang in the air for a few moments. Coach Hannigan slid the bottle over to Francois wordlessly. Francois had never tried alcohol in his life, but somehow he knew it was the right time for it. He drained the leftover amount straight from the bottle in one gulp.
Jesus.
You know the best thing about this, Coach Hannigan asked Francois as he watched him choke back his first ever alcoholic drink. Maybe not in this world, but somewhere, in some existence, my brother's still out there. He's helping people. He's happy. Coach Hannigan smiled again, and this time it was the real thing, not a bittersweet facsimile. I'd better get going, Francois said, standing suddenly. He was feeling the welcome warmth of the alcohol and wanted to take time to gather his thoughts. I have some basketball things I need to work on. Thanks for everything, Coach. I got a better idea, Coach Hannigan said. He stood from his desk again, turned out the office lights, and handed Francois a basketball. Let's go work on those basketball things together, and please, after what we just went through, I'm not Coach. My friends use my first name. Call me Hoops. The end. Hoops Hannigan and Francois Parker will be back in the next adventure.
And that's a lie. They won't.
No.
There's no more of them.
Well, that was wonderful.
Oh, one of them's dead. That's a problem in the world of basketball.
Kind of touching?
It was a little touching.
There were elements of it where I actually felt like I sincerely believed it had a nice thing. And then, of course, most of it was just stupid.
I have two questions for you.
Okay.
First and foremost, what sound does a squirrel make that everyone knows?
I don't think there is one.
No,
That's
that was amazing.
They chatter, but I don't know.
I guess that's what they would have been chattering together as a team. But yeah, that's what in my head, I was like, what was a squirrel do?
Yeah,
and
I don't know.
Just decided I would make it to where they all knew somehow.
This is to give Spencer a compliment here. This is the hallmark of your writing to me, dating back to 20 years ago, doing the baseball website and stuff, which is being overtly silly and then randomly affecting.
Right, yeah.
I kind of just can't help but do that. But in that one,
Yeah.
I think I envisioned that story actually being straightforward and seriously, like the coach giving him some advice that changed his life. And then when I was writing it out, instinct took over.
At what
It's like,
point
we
did
gotta
Hoops
make
Hannigan
this.
become the character that...
It just kind of happened. When I was thinking of the
He
coach's
always
name,
was.
I was like, okay, we got to use Coach Hannigan
Yes.
here.
Well, speaking of coach's name, this isn't necessarily a question, so I didn't have two for you, but it's just Old Man, which I always appreciate when someone is named Old Man in a story.
We could also just have it be Gary Oldman.
Well, it could be.
It's possibly him
He
doing
could play that role in the movie.
Yeah, what role can't the guy play, right?
How about someone who isn't an anti-Semite? We know that.
Unfortunately, also, Hollywood's decided, we think this guy's a pretty good actor, so, like, how old of character do you need? Well, 20. Let's get Gary Oldman to do it. How old of character do you need? 90. Let's get Gary Oldman to do it. The guy's 60. Make him play 50 to 70-year-olds.
There you go. All right. That was great.
That was very fun, guys. Our first Creepypasta week is done, our Doppelganger round. We'll be back next week to do our freeform stories.
And who knows what those things are going to be.
We have no idea. Until then, check us out everywhere. Obviously, our podcast is on all platforms. Please give us a review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere if you would. We'll read your review if you do. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/Boo2Inc. Everything's free. You can give us any amount of money you want if you want to, though, please. But we actually have a pretty large back catalog there. You can also check out our work on boo2inc.com. And we're on YouTube. Van's been uploading old episodes. We have other stuff on there, too. It's a lot of fun. It seems like a lot of people watch or listen to our podcast on there. So if you want to, do it. And do we have anything else to plug? Do you guys have anything about your personal lives you'd like to plug?
I had some really good cheese today.
Oh, yeah.
What kind?
It was Gouda.
No wonder it was Gouda.
Well, Aldi sells a particular type of cheese. I was just
And tortillas, apparently.
bragging, about the tortillas
I'm
at
beginning
Aldi.
to
They're very
suspect
good.
Van is like Aldi's marketing agent now or something.
Well, you know what? Aldi, get in touch with us if you want to sponsor the podcast.
Absolutely.
We'll do it in a heartbeat.
Dude,
Your cheese is good.
I
Your
fucking love the color
tortillas are
yellow.
good. They're German. You would like that, Brian. So, yeah, thanks,
We'll
Aldi.
see how much longer.
What have you eaten?
Wow. Let's see. I guess. So I got this big tub of sourdough pretzels, and that was a mistake because I am not meant to be with a giant tub of pretzels and not eat them all.
Yeah.
And it took it's probably something that should have lasted like 2 weeks, and I ate them all in like 2 days.
That
So,
sounds about right.
Well,
Pretzels
I
are great.
contributed to that problem.
yeah, those were really good. They were big, fat pretzels. You know, it's not like those little baby ones you get like the rolled golds. You could eat like 10 of them. These were big. And if you wanted
These
to
are
bite
thick
it all,
with 2 C's pretzels.
yeah, if you wanted to bite it all and just have it done in one bite, you're not doing that.
Oh, it's a multi-biter.
It's a multi-biter.
Yeah, you got to really get at that thing a few times. Well, that concludes our creepy pasta episode, which I guess it's fitting we ended talking about food. Pasta is a food. My final thought for this particular week is this. I think Spencer is right in his story, and I think we should all make it a point to seek out and befriend a ghost this week.
Spooky, spooky, very spooky. Happy Halloween.